Well, howdy. Thanks for visiting Small Farms, Big Ideas. And I wanted to show you my kitchen garden. I have an apartment kitchen garden here. And I've been growing a hydroponic garden in my apartment in this small space. And I want to show you and tell you a little bit about it. So let's get in for a closer look. Okay, so this is a tub of lettuce. It's using the Kratky system or Kratky method. It's got nutrient solution in it, and these pots have a lettuce plant. They have multiple plants because, you know, lettuce seeds are small. I'm going to thin it out. I want to let the plants get a little bit bigger, and then I'll get some salad greens out of it. But let's see if I can get this lid open. Look closely. I have a wick in each net pot, and each net pot is filled with grow stones, and you can see the roots are just starting to come out. And so what'll happen is they will get into the water and they will start to feed in the solution, and then the part that's above the water will become an air root, which is not going to get buried again. You can't, with the Kratky system, technically you're only supposed to fill it once when you start, and when the water's gone, the grow is done. So it's best adapted to fast growing plants like lettuce or, you know, some other greens. But I added some air stones to it, and that will allow me to maintain the water level or add more water without killing the roots. Because once they turn into air roots, if you cover them in water, there's a good chance they'll suffocate. And I don't want that to happen, obviously. So the Kratky method is really adaptable. You can see here I have a small Kratky lettuce plant in a mason jar, and all my plants are small, so I don't have a terrible huge amount of stuff to show you. I have two deep water culture buckets here, or bubble buckets as they're sometimes called. You can see in this one that I have a pepper plant, and you can see I have an air stone in there. There's lots of bubbles, and I have another one on this side. It's a tomato plant, but it has not popped up yet. It's pretty close. So what I did in here, my frame is a old grow tent frame, and you don't need to have a grow tent to do this, although these would do much better in a grow tent. But this is in my kitchen, so I have a little space here that I set aside under a window, and it's working just fine. It's a little bit tight in here, and I have to kind of work around it a bit, but I can deal with it. Now the lettuce will be done long before the tomatoes or the peppers are, and then it will probably come out, or I might plant something else in there. I have some bush cucumber seeds that I'd really like to give a try, and I might put one in this tote. So anyway, you know, a lot of people live in an apartment, and a lot of people don't have access to an outside garden, and they want to grow stuff. So I'm here to show you that you can even do it in a kitchen. I like to grow hydroponically because that means I don't have to deal with soil. Okay, you know, now you can just grow in pots and saucers, and a lot of people do it that way, but I think hydroponics is better. It makes plants grow faster. They generally do better in it, and like I have systems that I can automate, where I can put my watering on a timer. So if I want to go away for a weekend, I can. If I'm growing in pots, they have to be watered. Somebody's got to be there to do it. And I've heard a ton of horror stories about asking a neighbor to do it, so that's not a rabbit hole that I want to go down. But you know, any space in your apartment can grow vegetables. I mean, you could just get an air garden or two and grow in them. They work great. I have one. It's sitting on my coffee table. And you can really put them just about anywhere. They're idiot proof. You can grow in there, but they're made for small plants, really. You can't grow a full-size tomato or a full-size pepper in an air garden, and that's what I want. I really like my green peppers. I like to put them in salads. I like to cook with them. You know, I think they add a great flavor to things. And I like my tomatoes too, but I don't want those little tiny, you know, marble-sized tomatoes. I want some tomatoes that I can slice and throw a couple slices on top of a burger. And to do that, I need a bigger system. So I'm doing this bucket DWC, or deep water culture. Now, you can hook buckets together and feed them with a separate reservoir. I didn't do that in here because I'm in an upstairs apartment and I don't want to risk having any water leak into the apartment down below. So with an individual bucket, there's no holes for water to leak out. You know, all I have to do is maintain the water level in there, and it's kind of the same as in the cracky. You let it go down a few inches so you develop some air feeder roots, and then you let the rest of them stay in solution, and it's really pretty easy. And although these plants are small and you can't tell, once they get going, they grow fast, and they yield a couple of weeks before something would yield in soil. So like any plant, when it's small, it's really slow. I mean, it takes time. The first couple of leaves usually aren't even its true leaves. They're what are called cotyledon leaves. And then from there, it starts to develop regular leaves. And it's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill, if you've ever seen that in a cartoon. Starts off slow, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and then it gets big really fast. And that's what plants do. They're very, very slow at first, and then they reach a point where they have enough roots and they have enough leaves to collect light that they can really explode in growth. And you can get really explosive growth in deep water culture. Now, this bucket here is white, and it shouldn't be. I'm going to need to cover it. You don't want any light getting into a reservoir because it'll cause algae to grow, and that's not a good thing. So I will be covering this, and if you're going to do the cracky method, same thing. You want an opaque tote. You don't want light getting in. You'll notice over here I have air lines going in, and the hole is kind of big, so it's filled in with a piece of foam. That way no light will get in. But you know, this lettuce is really getting to a point where it's going to start to take off, and I am going to have to thin it really soon. What I have in here, I have 6 Butter Crunch, and that's the first 3 down below, and then I have these 3 up top are also Butter Crunch, and then down the middle and the 2 in the corners are leaf lettuce. It was a mixed seed pack, so there's different types of lettuce growing in each pot, and I will thin it out probably, you know, in about a week or so, and then I'll have something I can throw in a sandwich or a salad. But it's really worth doing. I mean, People ask, is it worth growing vegetables in an apartment? And all I can say is, for one thing, it's really satisfying to eat something that you've grown yourself. The other thing, you know that these plants have not been sprayed with anything, and you sure can't say the same thing for the stuff in the supermarkets. A lot of times you'll be on the news and you hear a story about coliform bacteria contaminating greens, and they tell you to throw them away, and that's another problem you won't have unless you don't wash your hands when you leave the bathroom, and I'm pretty sure you do. So that's another plus, and you know, it's fun and it's educational, and it's a great project to share with your kids. If you have kids, or your friends, if you have any friends, and I'm sure you do. So, you know, I really recommend giving it a try. You know, if nothing, buy an air garden and set it somewhere, and it's pretty much foolproof, you know, but it's limited mostly to herbs, you know, and really small patio tomatoes. So it's great, but it's limited. If you want full-size vegetables, you're going to need to do a bucket system, or you're going to need to grow in a pot. And but you can turn your apartment into a garden. There's a lot of ways to do it. This is just one way that I'm doing it here. You can set up a grow tent somewhere and grow in that. And the one thing I do want to mention, because it's important, you're going to need a light. You know, you can grow on a patio outdoors, and that's okay, you know, but as long as it gets sun. But in the winter, you're going to need to move inside, and for that you're going to need a light. And even in the summer, most apartments are too dark to really grow vegetables well. Vegetables are photosynthetic, and that means they take light and they make stuff from it. And what they make from it is food. And you got to bear in mind, most vegetables were grown outdoors. They have adapted to growing with a lot of sunlight, and you don't have that in your apartment, so you need a light. Now this thing sitting here is a homemade cob, and it's about 200 watts at the wall. And I want to explain, if you go and look for a light, you want an LED. Yes, you can grow fluorescent, and they're cheaper, but you have to replace the bulbs every year, and they won't give you enough light for tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers. And LED will give you the most light with the least amount of electricity used. So that's the way to go. I just happen to have this light, and you can still buy them. There's a place, I think it's called Timber Grow Lights, and they sell them, but they're just as expensive as a good LED from Horticulture Lighting Group. And I use those in my closets, and they are made in USA. They are beyond a doubt the best lights you can buy, dollar for dollar, but they're expensive. And you can also buy a cheaper one, and the ones I looked at that I like are the Spider Farmer lights. They are pretty much a copy of the HLG lights, and they have really good diodes in them. They're dimmable, and they're available in a lot of different sizes. And what you need to know is, a lot of the Chinese manufacturers, they blow up the numbers of what is in their lights. What they do, they add up the total wattage of all the chips. If they have 1,000 5-watt chips, they're going to say it's a 5,000 watt LED. Well, it's really not, because they don't run them at full power. You know, I don't see any that run at more than half power. The way you measure an LED is the watts at the wall. It's how much they pull when you plug them in, and they should provide those specs. If they don't buy that LED. And usually they'll provide a par chart, so you can get an idea of how high to hang your light, because most of you probably don't want to spend a lot of money on a light meter, although there are some apps on iPhones, and I think there's one also for Android, and I think it's called Photon or something like that, and you can take readings with that. So anyway, the lights are going to be important, and figure you need, for a high light plant like tomatoes, they measure light for, like in a greenhouse, in what's called DLI, daylight integer, and that's the total amount of light a plant gets over the time it's lit. Now a plant like tomatoes, it needs about 30 DLI. A plant like lettuce needs about half of that, you know, and most herbs can use half of that. A plant like cannabis can take as much as 60, you know, so there are varying light levels for plants, and that's why you can get away with growing lettuce with a fluorescent if you want, but it won't really give you enough light to flower a tomato or a pepper very well. They might do it, but you won't get peak performance, and honestly, it's just not worth it, you know, changing the bulbs every year and all that. And you know, LEDs, those bulbs can last for 50,000 hours, so it's the way to go. If you're going to grow indoors, you are going to need to provide light, so be prepared to do that. If you have stuff out on your patio and you want to move it in when it starts to get cold, you need to put it under a light. A window is not going to do it. So anyhow, I don't want to discourage you from getting started, but you know, I want you to be successful. So what you need to do is make sure you have a light source, make sure you have enough room for whatever it is you want to do, and honestly, if you have enough light, you can grow anything inside that you could grow outside. If you don't have a lot of space, then the air garden is perfect solution. You can grow lettuce, you can grow greens, you can grow small patio tomatoes. I've seen them grow chili peppers in it. You just have to get the right plants that are really dwarf. So anyway, I turned my kitchen into a garden basically, and you can too. And I want to encourage you to start growing vegetables indoors. It's a great hobby. Yeah, it costs a little bit of money up front, but it'll give you back more than that in satisfaction and in food. So till I see you again, take care and keep it green. Bye bye.